Hey everyone, it's Stephanie here, and today I have a video to share my June 2015 paper doll layout. This is a monthly series that I do where I take the Julie Nutting paper doll stamps and I pick a movie or a TV show that I really like and pick a quote from it, and I use that for the title on the page, and then I use the paper dolls to recreate a scene from that movie. So for this month here, I decided to do one of my all-time favorite movies, Stand By Me. This is a movie that I grew up with and probably have seen more times than I can count. And I just thought it would be really fun to do all boy stamps for this one and create a little scene. And I actually ended up decided to do this 2 pages just because I wanted to be able to have a lot of their bodies in the scene that I'm creating. And when you do multiple paper dolls, since they are kind of large and my album is only 6 by 8, if you do it landscape, you lose a lot of their bodies, which is, you can see when I did the Breakfast Club layout, that I only did 1 page and I did it landscape, that you kind of only get the top half of the dolls. And for this one I wanted to incorporate the train tracks, which is a kind of a main part of the movie, so I wanted to be able to have that as well. So I decided to do it 2 page. So here you can see I just went ahead and stamped some paper dolls. I only have 3 of the boy stamps. I do have the man stamp as well, but he doesn't really blend with these ones. He's kind of he has a different sized head and stuff, so he wouldn't have looked good. So I just ended up stamping one of the dolls twice. And what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to use the top half of one doll and the bottom half of another to create my fourth character in the scene, and that'll just allow it to not be completely identical, but still use this paper doll stamps that I have on hand without having to purchase more to be able to do the layout. So you can see here I went ahead and stamped them all on text paper. I used Tuxedo Memento black ink to do the stamping just because I knew I was going to be coloring them with Copic markers. And now I'm just going ahead and coloring all of their skin. I did stamp this 5th doll here, and I don't end up using him at all. I'm going to end up stamping another pair of legs. You'll see that down later in the video. So I don't end up using him. So I think I only colored his skin and then I just quit with him. But you can see now I'm going ahead and doing their hair. Now the hair on these dolls isn't really perfectly similar to the characters in the movie. I just tried to pick which ones I thought would resemble them the best. Not only just their hair, but the clothes that they're wearing. And then I just went ahead and colored their hair as close as I could. They mainly all have like brownish colored hair. Chris in the movie has like a dirty blonde hair, and then Vern's is a little bit darker, Gordy's is dark, and then Teddy's is, a general brown color as well. So I kept them pretty similar. I just changed the shading a bit to kind of be more similar to the doll that I was trying to recreate. And I just mainly used browns, and then I also added some of the some warm gray into Vern's hair just to kind of get it to a darker color because his is more on the black side. And then once I have all of that done, I'm going to go ahead and start to figure out their clothes. So for all of their clothes, I always stamp them on pattern paper, and then I cut them out and paper piece them back onto the doll. I just prefer to do this because it gives the doll so much more dimension and detail rather than just coloring them. So I'm just kind of going through. I pulled a bunch of different 6x6 pattern papers from my stash that I thought would replicate some of the stuff that they wore. And I try and stay similar to what they wear in the movie. So I've seen it enough times that I already know what they wear, but I usually just pull up an image from online, and I kind of use that as my inspiration as I'm pulling out the patterns for their clothes. So, for example, Vern's shirt in the movie, one of the ones that he wears is like a golf shirt, and it's like a striped bluish red color golf shirt with like the collar on it. So I thought that doll worked well for him, even though it's not quite the same because it doesn't tuck into the pants or anything. It's pretty similar, and I just felt like that doll represented him the best. So that's kind of what I do when I'm figuring these out, is I just figure out what will replicate them the most, and then I go with that. So the first doll there that I pieced together is Chris, and in the movie he wears jeans and a white t-shirt. I didn't have a doll that was just wearing a t-shirt, so I went ahead and used that doll there and just went ahead and just put a white long sleeve shirt on him. There is a little bit of subtle detail in that shirt, just barely like a gray chevron pattern, but I just didn't want it to be completely stark white, so I just went ahead and used that one. Then I used a green colored shirt for Teddy. He always wore like army green colors in the show. And I did Vern shirt like I explained earlier. And then for Gordy's shirt, in part of it, he wears like a red striped t-shirt. This isn't exact to the colors that were in the t-shirt he wore, but it was pretty close that I thought it would work for this. So I just went ahead with that. And then now you can see here the the doll that I used for Vern, I just used the top half of the one doll, and then I used the bottom half because I didn't want him to be in shorts. So I just kind of cut them apart and then glued them back together to create a whole new doll. So don't be afraid to kind of play around with the paper dolls and mix and match pieces of them. Usually you can cut their heads right off and attach them to other heads. As terrible as that sounds, you can definitely do that, and it just gives them a whole new look. So definitely I encourage you to play around with them and just kind of see what you can do. So now you can see there I did a little pair of glasses on Teddy. If you've seen the movie, you know that he wears really thick black glasses. And I just used my silhouette to cut those out. And then I also cut a little black square. You can see there I put it in Vern's pocket. That's actually meant to be his comb. That's something that he has in the movie that's, you know, a main part of the movie is his comb. And I knew it would be way too hard to actually cut out a tiny little comb that little size. So I just went ahead and cut a little black piece and then stuck it so it looks like it's down in his pocket. And I figured that looks good enough for his comb. So I always usually try and incorporate small little details like that into the layout somehow, just to really make that movie come to life on the page. So now that I have those two things done there on those dolls, I'm just taking a gray marker, a couple different shades actually, and I'm just going around their clothes to add a little bit of shading. This just kind of gives shadows and dimension and makes them look a little bit less flat. And then I realized that I completely forgot to do their shoes. I normally paper piece their shoes, but I figured since I had already had all their clothes on and I just was kind of lazy, I just decided I was just going to color them rather than paper piece them. So I just took my Copic markers once again, and I'm just kind of adding darker colors along the bottoms just for the shading and to kind of look like the sole of the shoe. And then I'm going ahead and adding lighter colors in the top area, and then just kind of going back and forth between the medium and the dark to shade and just give them a little bit of dimension. So now that I have that done, the dolls are all done and ready to go. So now it's time to create the scene for them to go on. So I picked this quote from the movie, which was, "I never had any friends like the ones I had when I was 12. Jesus, does anyone?" And that's actually, if you've seen the movie, the character who plays Gordy, and when the movie starts, he's older and he's actually writing a book about their life as children. So that was him actually narrating, and that was him at the very end of the movie. That was one of the final things that he says at the very end of the movie, and I just loved it, and I knew right away that's the one I wanted to use in the page. So I just went ahead and printed that with my printer like I always do, and I adhered that onto the white base piece. I usually have a 6x8 white cardstock piece that I kind of work on top of and just kind of adhere all my pieces. And then now you can see I'm just kind of adding the rest of the elements to create a little scene. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at first. I knew I wanted the train tracks, but it was really hard to come up with something that would work because it's such a small scale for them to be positioned on. So it was kind of hard, and I wasn't 100% sure if I even loved it when I finished the page, but I really loved how the dolls turned out, so I guess I can live with it. It didn't come across exactly how I wanted it, but I mean, I liked it enough in the end. It wasn't exactly what I was envisioning. But anyway, so I went ahead and cut a train track out with my silhouette, so you can see there. And I cut out some grass area with just some pattern paper, and then used a stitch die along the top of it to add some detail. Then I also cut out that beigey pattern paper. I was kind of going for the look of like rocks and stuff around the train tracks. You can't really see a lot of the detail from here, but I think it really works for what I was trying to convey there. So now that I have the tracks on, I'm going to go ahead and add some bushes and trees to the side. And I was just kind of envisioning when I was creating this, most of the movie they're walking along train tracks and through the woods and stuff. So I was just trying to kind of mimic that. So I just went ahead and covered the end pieces there with those are actually tree tops, and I just used them to be bushes there. And then I went ahead and added a tree trunk and a tree top on either side just to make it symmetrical and even everything out, and so that it all kind of looks like it ties together. And then once I have that done, I can go ahead and actually adhere my dolls onto the page. So when I do this, I usually just use liquid glue, and I just add it fully to the back of the dolls. And this just gives me a little bit of time so that I can move things around if I don't get the doll exactly where I want it. The liquid glue kind of gives you a little bit of time where you can kind of manipulate and maneuver where you have stuff stuck down. So once I had those on there, I went ahead and did the same process for the other two dolls. I'm just adding liquid glue to the back of them, and I like to really cover it, mainly because these dolls are, pretty heavy now because there are a lot of layers, and I'm adhering them onto a background that's uneven because of all the layers to create the scene. So I like to make sure I get lots of adhesive on there so I don't have any worries that anything's going to fall off. And then once I have that done, the layout's complete. So that's my layout for this month. I hope you enjoyed the process of me creating it. I had a lot of fun with this one. It's definitely a movie that I really love, and it's, like I said, it wasn't exactly what I envisioned, but I really ended up liking it in the end. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you next month for another paper doll layout.